Welcome back, everybody, to the Fairness Summit portion of our Bond series. And this is the series where we're holding an intention to create a stronger bond between every aspect of your life, your relationships, your community, you and your divine purpose. And we have today some absolutely a fabulous duo who are going to be speaking about the whole concept of fairness in children and the idea of tools for a new world that focus on our children as children and teens. We have Bobbi DePorter, who is president of Quantum Learning Network, which is an organization that is wedded to producing quantum learning and also super camp programs, which are these absolutely amazing programs for students, teachers, schools, and organizations across the U.S., but also in other countries around the world. Bobbi's has more than 48,000 super graduates, and she's also got quantum learning implemented in thousands of schools, which has impacted over 2 million students. Bobbi also has a special thing she's developed called the 8 Keys of Excellence, which she'll be talking to you about, which had an unprecedented impact on helping children really realize their potential. She's also authored several books on learning and teaching called Quantum Success, Quantum Learning, Unleashing the Genius in You, Quantum Business, Quantum Teaching, and the 8 Keys of Excellence, Principles to Live By. And they are for both children and parents. Hi, Bobbi. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And one of my other great buddies from the Transformational Leadership Council is Lisa Nichols. She is the CEO of an organization called Motivating the Teen Spirit, and she's also co-author of that fantastically successful aspect of the Chicken Soup series, Chicken Soup for the African American Soul. She was a featured speaker on The Secret and just won everyone's hearts, and she's a dynamic motivational speaker and just an incredible advocate for personal empowerment and emotional health, particularly in children, and she does an amazing, amazing workshop with teens. She's been likened to Oprah Winfrey and many other inspiring speakers like Maya Angelou. So welcome, Lisa. It's wonderful to have you with me.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Well, let's start with really our society, what we've created for teens and children. We have created a situation where children from a very young age are encouraged to compete above anything else. I think I wrote my book, The Bond, because of a personal experience that happened to me when my youngest daughter, who's very talented in drama, was chosen for a central part in her school play. And I suddenly heard she had been shunted to a more minor role, and I couldn't find out the reason until someone let slip, one of her friends, that another girl had lied to take over her role when a new director came on board. And this girl, by the way, was her best friend. And when I tried to bring this up with the mother kind of shrugged her shoulders and said, well, that's life, isn't it? And I was sort of shocked by the whole thing until I started thinking to myself, well, yeah, this is the life we've created for ourselves and for our children. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Bobbi? What's one of the biggest problems we face now in schools? Just related to competition.
What you just brought up is we learn most from models, and particularly if our models are in our home and our own parents and what we're seeing out there, because actions speak louder than words, and they pick that up about what's okay, and not okay. And there's, so much stress in schools to succeed. There's so much pressure on kids that what they have to achieve, to get into college and life and what's expected of them. And in many schools, the amount of homework and that what's expected is so high. And so then, what's important is that grade, that score. And to get it, they compete, they cheat, all these things happen because of so much emphasis on the score when learning should be such a fun and, be curious and excited about learning, because learning is so exciting. And what we want to create is these lifelong learners that just want to soak up everything, not be stressed, because we know what stress does to the body as well. And, they shut down.
Yes, yes. And what ends up happening, I mean, by the time we get to teenage, what do you see, Lisa, that goes on when kids are imbued with this whole idea of competition from such an early age?
Well, what happens, Lynne, is they find it difficult to really tap into who they really are. They're so busy trying to keep up with the Joneses, whoever the Joneses might be, that there's very little authenticity. I mean, when we do our trainings, and, we've trained as of 2009 over 270,000 teens worldwide, and what we find is the same pattern, whether we're in Africa, whether we're in China, whether we're in Redondo Beach, California, or we're at San Diego, the same thing lies, and that is, I just want to know who I really am. I'm so busy trying to be like the next person, trying to keep up with the next person, trying to maintain status quo, created by someone else's perception, that they're living more in the perception of who people think they should be than the authenticity of who they've been designed to be. I find that when we sit inside our trainings, which focus really on emotional literacy, there's no place in society or school that teaches a teen how to manage their anger, how to push past anger and get back to joy and love, how to handle a letdown like your daughter had. How does she emotionally get through that? There's no place in school, though math and science are mandated, very important subjects. There needs to be a place that allows them to just breathe and say, listen, I'm going to make some mistakes. I'm going to make some poor decisions. How do I get back up sooner, quicker, faster? And so what we find in our trainings is that they're really grateful for the opportunity to learn how to manage this thing called my feelings, how to manage this thing called disappointment, hurt, betrayal, lies. Your daughter being taught how to handle a betrayal. There's a lot that was going on with that. There was rejection, there's betrayal, there's frustration, there's anger, and without learning how to deal with it, it just kind of piles up in our backpack. In addition to the books, you start putting all these hurts back there, and without learning how to take them off, unload the backpack, and push through it, you're dealing with 20, 30, 40, 50-year-old people who are saying, how did I get here emotionally?
Yes, exactly. And I'm thinking of this other pressure that teens and children have now, which is an economic and, a marketing pressure that I'm shocked by with young people. I have a 7-year gap with my two girls, and one's 21 and one's now 14, and the 14-year-old is bombarded by adult information about what she should buy all the time, and very adult-looking clothing and videos and all this sort of stuff that really treats her like a very hard-nosed consumer. And that's what we as adults are doing in terms of competition. We're feeding this to children. Do you have any views on that, Bobbi?
Well, teens have such a need to fit in. I mean, it's a primal need that they have, and what is going out there, they want to be accepted. And what Lisa brought up about that authenticity and finding who they are, to be secure in who they are, and find their own style and want to represent that to the world. One of the things we do is have students at Super Camp, they start sharing about themselves in a team, and they get very close in their team, and they share a little bit, and then we up the gradient, and they share a little bit more, and you up the gradient, and then when they're hearing from other kids the same concerns, the same problems, the same what's going on in their life, that all of a sudden they go, wow, that person's like me, and then they get the courage to share a little bit more about themselves. And what they learn is this big shift of when they're just being themselves, their authentic selves, when they really know who they are and share that, take that chance to step out and share it. What they get is a positive response on the other side. And I've even seen, kids' faces, it's almost,
right.
They're surprised.
Shocked.
It's kind of like shocked, and they're kind of, you can see it in their eyebrows kind of going up, and it's like, what? I shared a bit of myself, and people like me more. And that's a big secret almost out there, is when you are yourself and you really share yourself with others and you're your true self, your true style, people gravitate to you. And that's what kids get. And I'd say that's the biggest shift, is being okay to be myself and show it out there in the world.
And Bobbi, they never would know that. You know, we have this thing in our trainings where if someone says something that you can relate to, raise one hand if it's you, raise two hands if it's really you, and raise two hands and stand up if it's so you. And so what's really cool is watching kids put one hand, two hands, and stand up, and then watching the face of the person who was speaking, and they have that shock look like, oh my God, or as they would say, OMG, I'm not alone. You know, I'm not, and how good it feels to be not alone. So to what you mentioned, Lynne, you know, them being bombarded, I think that it's important for us to intentionally create a space for our children, whether they're children, preteens, or teens, create a space where they can breathe. My son went to Super Camp with Bobbi DePorter's team, and it was amazing to have a place where he could breathe as we create in our workshops, but a place where they can stop, and what we call it is take your own emotional pulse and see where you are, not connected with, you know, and we speak teen language, so excuse me, but not connected to your girlfriend or your homeboy, your homegirl, but just connected to you. Take your own emotional pulse. Find out where your dot is on this map called your life, you know, and giving them and without being bombarded by advertisement or perceptions or the pressure, just a place where they can breathe. That, I think, is the thing, Lynne, that we as parents, as educators, as youth advocates, that's that thing that we have to really be a stand for, is allowing them to find the place inside them that says, this is my rhythm, this is the tune I like to dance to, this is how I want to show up in the world, this is the story I want to be told about me. What does that look like? And helping them as early as possible define and continue to redefine the story that they want to be told about them. Like if we fast forward and you wanted someone to tell the story of your life, what would it say? And then to give them the space to be that person. So I so wholeheartedly agree, and Bobbi's place is amazing for teens to do that.
Well, it sounds like what you're really saying, too, is that gets, I mean, that kind of intelligence never gets addressed ever in education or even at home. There's very little time for that. Is that right?
What we hear all the time from kids is, why didn't anybody teach that to me before? Or why didn't anybody show that to me before? And there's this thing out there that we need that kids are supposed to just pick it up and be the best person without somebody showing, and the role models that they have and the media that's around, you know, and some of the celebrities are not the best role models and that they attach to. So it's teaching them specifically, and we assume they already know it. You know, we started Super Camp teaching kids how to learn because it's assumed they go to school, they should know how to learn effectively. But there's a lot of content and other things, and we found they weren't learning that. And the same with discovering who they are and building up that confidence. It just makes a big difference when we teach them specifically.
And, you know, what we hear a lot, Bobbi said, you said we hear, why didn't someone teach me? And what we hear in our workshops, because, again, you know, we're working on emotional literacy and emotional prosperity and how to manage what's happening in your life. And what we hear is, can my parents come through this training? And my teacher needed this course. And then what happened with us about 3 years ago is the parents actually began to beat down our door and say, listen, our children are coming home learning how to press pause on their negative self-talk and how to press play on their powerful self-talk. We need this as well. And so we actually had to go against the plan that we had set when I started the company 11 years ago and begin to allow the rooms to be blended with parents and teens because they really were hungry. And I think I really want to say that's to, as parents, we don't know how to, this is our first time with this particular child in this era. We haven't done parenting before, and so to really hold the space of no judgment, I realized we had to do that we're doing the best we could as parents with what we have. My son is 16 this year, and he's an amazing kid, but this is my first time being a parent of a 16-year-old, 6'2" child, and I'm learning how to do it as well. And so I realized that it's just the tools, that we haven't been given the tools, and without the tools that we can learn, we simply pass on the behaviors that our parents and our grandparents live by, the things that we didn't even agree with. We reproduce them, and I realize that they're kind of like become our blueprint. Until we create a new blueprint, we have the existing blueprint as unhealthy, as healthy, whatever it is, we'll operate from it. So I'm realizing that teachers are looking for guidance, but teachers will say, they're not counselors. And so when we come in and we work with school systems, they're grateful because they can get back to the math and the English, because they're not there really to manage the fact that you're angry that your father hasn't been around in 10 years. They're not really there to manage the fact that a young girl's been touched inappropriately. And the fact of the matter is those things occur. And the sooner we can teach our teens, our young adults, how to manage what's happening in life, then they can get back to learning. They can get back to being on point. They can focus the way Bobbi teaches them how to do that. So it's all interdependent, and it's all incredibly necessary. And there are some gaps, and I think that's what makes programs like mine and Bobbi's that's not a marketing statement. That's a necessity. My program, and I'm sure Bobbi's was born out of a necessity. I tell people I created the space I needed as a teen. That's all I did.
Yes, absolutely. Now, what about the whole idea of community? I mean, one of the reasons that your groups are so necessary is that, I mean, as Hillary Clinton said, it takes a village to raise a child, but there aren't any villages anymore. So do you find that really is a problem with the kids that you see, Bobbi, that they really don't have neighborhoods and communities anymore to tap on?
I know the scene has changed, because when I grew up, I went outside and played with neighborhood kids, and we were all together, and our parents all knew each other, and that's not, happening anymore. But what we're finding, with the programs, when we go into schools and students learn, what we're teaching, and the teachers learn it, we're finding that the students are taking it home to their families, and the families know it, and the parents, work, so they're taking it into the business, and we have whole quantum learning 8 Keys of Excellence towns that are embracing it, but to get a consistent message for kids, because it's one thing, I'm just getting it from one person, and 90% of my world is something different. But when they see consistent support for things that you're talking about, Lynne, with the fairness and the sharing and, taking care of each other, and that's where that sense of fulfillment and goodness comes inside, where people feel good about themselves and who they are, and they want to make a contribution. They don't want to be selfish over here. They want to make a contribution and often don't find the space or the know-how to do that. But that's the most fulfilling thing in life, and when kids get that as a young age, it makes such a difference.
Well, that's the amazing thing. I mean, we are brought up with this idea that we're born to be selfish. That's been hardwired into us, so we're told. And even our genes are selfish. But when I look through all of the science doesn't support that. We were born to share, care, and be fair, and that's what's hardwired. And the sharing and we were made to feel good about caring and giving and altruistically giving. And sharing is so necessary, and belonging is so necessary that it's really is, in a sense, a matter of life and death. But we don't belong anymore. I mean, do you find that that's a major problem with the teens that come to you, Lisa? They don't have communities.
Yeah, I do, and I think that they're hungry for community. That's why Facebook is explosive. I think that they're hungry to create that safe haven. I think that they're hungry to share. That's why on Facebook they put up way too much information, because they want people they want people to like them. That's the whole thing on that icon on Facebook. How many people like this? Do you know how hungry they are to open that up and see 1, 2, 3, 5 people liked it? That the need for community is so hungry. That's why all the social media is explosive, because if I can't find it in my home, if I don't have it in my school, I'm going to go out to the internet. I'm going to go out to international. I'm going to go wherever I can to get it. That's why the children in gang-infested communities, they join gangs. They don't join gangs because they want to be bad kids. They join gangs because they want a village. and that gang becomes their village. The first thing they say when they join a gang is, I'll die for you. Oh, my God, that makes me feel so loved. Now, it's backwards and it's unhealthy and it's toxic, but the core need is the core need to be connected, to be approved, and to be embraced. So when you create that for a child, and we can manufacture communities. I mean, I've manufactured a community. Like when I was stepping into self-development, and historically as an African-American woman, my culture didn't do self-development. We do church. And yet I didn't necessarily want to do church. I wanted to do spirituality, but I needed a community that was like-minded, which is what makes our TLC community so delicious and wonderful, is that I found a like-minded community that I could see. So even as adults, we are looking for it, but it's a hunger and the need that never stops being fed. I wanted to take my son to Magic Mountain, and I work every weekend in the summer practically, and I only had one weekend free. And the weekend happened to be the same weekend that we were doing our teen workshop. But my son grew up in it. I mean, he was working for free for me since he was like 8 in these workshops. So I said, Jelani, we can miss one day of the teen workshop. It's a 2-day training. Let's miss one day and let's go to Magic Mountain together. And he looked at me, and I'm thinking I'm just taking him to work. I mean, he gets to do the teen. And he goes, Mom, I can't believe you're asking me to miss motivating the teen spirit. I can't believe. Like, he was so disgusted in me. And what I realized was I was asking him to not go back to his community.
Yes.
Well, I stood corrected. And so, they're going to create it, Lynn. They're going to create it. If they don't have it, they'll create it. We may not approve of the community that they create, but that's what Facebook is. That's their online community. And so it's our job, I think, as teen advocates, whether we're parents or not, it's our jobs to work to create a healthy community that allows them to expand and contract as they need to discover, and most importantly, to make mistakes and still receive unconditional love. That's the thing I hear they fear the most is being judged. That's the thing I hear they fear the most, the repercussions of making a mistake.
Yes, absolutely.
To get them to really listen to us, too, we have something we call our prime directive, and that is we call it theirs to ours, ours to theirs. And first of all, we have to understand their world. It's all about understanding them so that they don't feel judged, and that it's not like we dress and speak like they do, but we understand their world, and we understand and respect their world. And when they get that, that's when they start listening to what it is we want to teach them, that we teach them, and then it takes what they learn back to their world. So it's theirs to ours, ours to theirs, and that whole thing about really feeling understood, because they want to feel understood.
Absolutely. And in so many cases, too, they are the custodians of the new world. I mean, the world that we have now, we've created something and shepherded it into crisis. So we have so much crisis going on now, from economic crisis to ecological crisis, foreign debt crisis to extreme weather, all of the things that we're on the brink of. And I think so much of this next generation having to deal with and clean up this mess. What sort of tools do you think are going to be so important for them to create a new world? Bobbi, why don't you talk a little bit about some of the 8 keys?
I will. And one of the things you said that about the crisis and how many we have in the world, that a lot of kids come from that place, is that's not fair. I didn't create this crisis, and I'm born into it, and now I'm expected to do something about it. So that kind of conversations go on just for them to be able to speak about that and how they're feeling. But what we found so powerful in our program in Super Camp, which is now spread into all of our quantum learning schools, is the 8 Keys of Excellence, Principles to Live By. And it's a guidance set of principles that create a strong core inside of students that guide them. And so when things happen, when they speak out, when they have to make a decision, it all comes filtered through this core of who they are. And kids, we found over the 30 years that we've been teaching this, have adopted them in such a high level because they resonate with them. And the 8 keys are integrity, failure leads to success, speak with good purpose, this is it, commitment, ownership, which is taking responsibility for their actions and owning their choices, flexibility, and balance. And balance is about being mindful of self and others while focusing on what's meaningful and important. So I love that, where they learn to be mindful of yourself and others, when they're making the decisions.
Yes, and this is it. Tell us what that means.
It's being present in the moment. It's not being in the past and the future. And when they really give their full attention to the present, one is that's where there's no fear in the present, because fear is when you're thinking about the past or the future. And it's where you can take action. And when you focus your attention on the present moment is where they can get the most done and enjoy it more.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And how do they react how do you introduce these keys?
One is that they learn them, and we actually have body motions and peg them to a body peg. There's different mnemonic systems, and one is so that when they peg them and associate them with their body, they carry them with them always and can always remember them. But we create stories around them and activities so that they have a lot of interaction, a lot of reflection, looking at their life. The key of integrity is about matching behavior with values. So one is that they really look at what do I value. And when you sit down with a child, knee to knee, and you're with them and ask them about their values, they open up and they care so much. On the outside, it could be that they're running around and trying to fit in and doing, behaviors that maybe are not as positive. But when you sit down and have real conversations, and they get that you care and you're really listening and talking about values, and then they look at their actions and their behaviors and how they will show that, it gets very meaningful for students. They go in a very deep place, because even the last night of Super Camp, we have something called Stepping Out, and it's looking at, okay, here's something that's very important to me and something I value, and how I will show it to the world is, and that's my actions. And they take a step forward in front of a crowd and take a stand for their greatness. And it's a moment, that students, you can see their shoulders drop, they're standing taller. It's that moment of, this is who I am, and I value and care about this, and this is something that I will contribute to the world, and I take a stand for my greatness. It's just quite a moment.
Oh, my goodness. I bet it is. That's incredible. Lisa, what sort of tools do you find are really useful in your workshops?
Well, we do a number of, we blend cognitive learning with interactive experiential learning, because we realize that teens are hands-on. They're used to Google download, they're used to interactive, and a lot of times if learning isn't interactive now, if they have to just look at a chalkboard, they are bored stiff. So we blend cognitive learning, which is I love about Bobbi's program. They're very experiential as well, with experiential learning. And we teach a lot of things that they could do. We teach this one program that we actually put on CD so they can take it home. But we teach this one program about how to press pause on your negative self-talk. When we ask them questions, we realize the moment before they do most of their, as they call their silly things, their brain dead things, they were feeling negative about themselves, or they were feeling angry about something, and they had negative conversation going on in their head, which manifested in their actions. And so we teach a technique on how do I recognize my negative self-talk, press pause. So we actually have this thing where they actually press the side of their head to press stop on the track that's playing, called negative self-talk, and then they press the other side of their head to press play on the powerful self-talk. And if they want to be more discreet, they press their right palm to press stop, and they press their left palm to press play. And so we find that giving them this technique, literally we've had teens come back to us 10 years later. And this one young woman said, Ms. Nichols, I graduated about 9 years ago, and I was valedictorian at my college, and I had to give the commencement speech. And on the way up to the podium, I kept saying, I'm going to mess up. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to totally screw this up. It's going to be horrible. And she said she got to the podium. She goes, and Miss Nichols, in front of 5,000 people, I put my paper down. I pressed the left side of my head to press stop on my negative self-talk, and I pressed the right side of my head to press play on the powerful. And I gave the speech, and I started, and I got a standing ovation. And at the end, this woman came to me and said, you were amazing. But young lady, why did you press your head? And she said, she said I was pressing stop on my negative self-talk, and I was pressing play on my powerful self-talk. And she said the mother just started bawling, and she said, I thought I came to see my son graduate, but in addition to that, I came to hear you say that. I finally can release myself, too, from all my negative chatter. I wish I would have learned that when I was your age. And so it's giving them techniques, real things, physical things, NLP, where they can shift their behavior in the moment and take it with them. She went through our program when she was like 15, 14, and here she was graduating from college using the technique.
Wow. What about helping them to accept people who are not like them? Because one of the problems we have, and one of the things that is most unfair about America now, is it's so polarized. It's probably at its most unfair in history, where we've got an enormous economic divide, the worst, but we also have this division, this opposition situation in every kind of way. Politically, we've got it religiously, we have it in so many different ways, and people more and more, and I would assume this with children too, are not connecting with people who are ethnically not like them. There's less and less of that. There's less and less neighborhood, as Bobbi said. And kids are picking up that there are people not like them and that they don't necessarily have to be so accepting. What's your view on that? I mean, do you have any ways of fostering that?
Well, one is a child really knowing who they are and feeling secure in that and who they are, because it's all that goes back to that trying to fit in, and here's the crowd I want to fit in with. But when they feel secure in who they are and not being swayed from their own values and who they are, and then putting them in situations where they have conversations. At Super Camp we put them in teams, and in those teams they get to know each other on such a deep level, and they very often make best friends with somebody that at school they wouldn't, because they're different than them, a different personality or a different race or different whatever it is, maybe is not their best friend at school. And they found that they make best friends, and then all of a sudden there's a switch in their head, People are all the same. We do programs in a lot of different countries, so we are in Asia, South America, Europe, and every place we go, it's like kids are the same. And when they have these deep conversations with each other, then you really know who the other person is, and it's like, wow, that person's just like me. That person, I can relate to. I'm feeling, that I want to be with that person. So I think it's about knowing other people, and the more situations that we can put people together in and have deep conversations and sharing, that we have less of that. And that's at school community, too. With the 8 Keys of Excellence, it creates a common language. So what we're going for is a positive culture and a common language throughout the school where people will stop and have meaningful conversations with other people in the school that are not like them. And that's a huge shift, again, in their heads.
Well, I think it's also...
Go ahead, Lisa. Go ahead.
I think it's also important to highlight the likeness, because I think with every additional thing you find like someone, it breaks chips away at that wall and builds that bridge, which is why we say put one hand up if you can relate, two hands up and stand up. And what happens is we make a point to diversify our trainings. We do about 10 trainings a year for teens. They come from all over the world, and we literally have them raise their hands, Lynne, so they can see each other. And I remember this one particular training where this young white girl who may had a 4.5 GPA, who was the spokesperson for the Kiwanis Club, was sitting next to this young African-American guy who lived in a group home, who had never met his father, and his mother was on drugs. And they kept raising their hands for some of the same things. And finally she looked at him, she goes, "I can't believe you're so much like me, dude." And it was so cool because they got a chance to see the visual. And after 17 hours, 2 days in our training, at the end of the training, she said, "Man, I don't know how to tell my dad that, like, you're my new friend." And he goes, "That's cool, because I don't know how to tell my homeboys that you're my new friend as well." And so it was, I just watched literally this wall dissolve and this bridge being built because we kept building on their likeness. And we also say, you have many differences. Those differences are to respect, and the likeness, those are to celebrate. And so I think if we build on what's alike, and at the core of us, we all want to be loved. We all want to be approved. We all want to be validated. We all want to be, admired and acknowledged. We all want to hear thank you. And so what I find is we keep going back to those core, like Bobbi does all the time, those core values. And if we go back to those core values, I love the way Bobbi said, sit knee to knee with a child, and have them sit knee to knee together and find out, even though you're black, I'm white, you're Latino, you're man, you're woman, you're rich, I'm poor, whatever it is, we both want to be loved. If we can find those core values, those core desires, and we can celebrate those together in our authenticity, and then respect our differences. And they may not, we don't say respect differences because they don't want to hear that in our workshops. They just want to hear, there's someone out there that's like me. And what happens is the respect just begins to emerge. We don't have to say it. We just speak to what's possible together. And then being willing, Lynne, and our workshops are kind of edgy. They get spicy. I tell people, bring your water bottle in the room. They get spicy. You know me. And I say, let's confront the uncomfortable. Let's confront the uncomfortable. Let's not be the norm. Let's have the audacity to be outrageous and unrealistic for a great future. And so teens are all about pushing back anyway. So when we introduce to them, push back against society's perception that you should be defiant, they go, yeah. And so we literally use that energy that they have anyway because they're 15 to work to their advantage and to their communities.
That's a really interesting idea. Go ahead, Bobbi.
Oh, there is that perception from teens, too. And when you ask them, where they'll be passing a group of adults and they'll have this perception and assumptions about the way that they're going to act, and when they don't, that is a surprise, too. I just came from our program that we held at Wake Forest, or holding now, and they were walking, our super camp group was walking out a path, and walking the other direction were two female professors that were walking the other direction, and I was a few feet back. And so when they saw me, they said, "Do you know who that group is?" And it's like, "Yes, that's our group." And they said, "Wow, I'm not used to teenagers in groups, talking to us, being interested in who we are, being nice and kind to us." It's like, what are you doing? So there is that perception, and that annoys a lot of teens, that there is that perception. It's like, that's not me.
Right.
Yes. That you're automatically going to assume they're going to be surly and awful. Now, what's interesting to me that you both talked about is this deep talk. In the bond, I talk about a guy called Orland Bishop, who is working with gang members in Watts, California, Southern California, and he's working with members of the Crips and the Bloods and getting them to try to relate to each other. And he uses a very similar set of tools in the sense of just having them sit and tell the other person their story and talk to them deeply about what matters to them, what's important, what happened to them, and particularly how they got off course. Where did they stop dreaming about what they had dreamed for when they were young? And that seems to bridge divides, that real deep talk, that knee to knee or elbow to elbow. Yeah, of finding, as you say, that commonality, that bond that exists no matter what the seeming divide. Do you see this? Does this tend to work then, once they've had this experience with other teens, do they tend to bring this home? Does this end up creating better communication with their parents?
I think it often has to be sparked that it's deep-seated, and if they have an opportunity where somebody is actually a parent or someone is listening to them, it can spark it. But I think without that spark, sometimes it goes down deep. Last January, when we were in New Orleans at TLC, a group of TLC members went with me to a school that all the kids in the school had been kicked out of other schools or actually been incarcerated in the past, and so a lot of the students had really stopped dreaming, but they have them deep inside. And some of the kids were even they had drugged them to calm their behavior, and they were sitting there, and some of them were laying on the chairs, and some of them were, they would say one word and they were told to leave the room. But when we just calmed down and our group was there with them, we went knee to knee and we talked about them, and all these lethargic kids all of a sudden woke up, and here they had such a rough past, and they felt like they didn't have any options, and there they were. They had dreams. When you give them the space and listen and care and look at them, it's like all of a sudden, instead of laying down, they were sitting up and they were looking you in the eye, and they're talking about what they want. They do have dreams. They just don't know how to get there, and it just feels so impossible to them. But having somebody to listen to them, so they need somebody to spark, to listen to them, to bring it out. But it's there. It's deep.
So what do you suggest parents do who are listening in on this to help spark that? Because as you say, both of you, that the pattern the child's expected, the child, first of all, is inundated with this competitive mindset at school and these expectations, and that their idea, the parents end up formulating an idea of them, and there ends up being this conflict constantly. How do you break through that? What do you suggest, Lisa?
I think one of the first things to do, and whenever parents come to me, and I get this question a lot, Lynne, what can I do? What can I do? How do I get back connected with my teen? The first thing I would say is, please don't wait till your child is in complete crisis to begin to have a dialogue that's meaningful and deep. I'm amazed at hundreds of parents I invited to bring their teens through at 12. No, they're fine. And at 16, they're like, please help my child. She's lost her mind. I said, well, when you think about this program and any program like this as a life skills and life development program versus an intervention program, then we can begin to build tools and put life learning and life management tools in their backpack. They learn math and English and geography long before they have to use it in the world, just so that they're prepared, have them learn how to manage their emotions. And so that's the first thing, is to get your child in a program where they're learning how to move through life as a form of a life skills development versus an intervention program. Secondly, and this is where the risk is taken by the parents, but it's a good risk, and most parents are a little nervous to take it, to sit down, as Bobbi said, knee to knee, and to have a conversation like the gentleman Watts, where you're the other person. You're sharing parts of your life. Now, you share it age appropriately, but you talk to them and say, listen, I'm learning how to do this thing. Every year on my son's birthday, I say this every year. I say, happy birthday, Jelani. You're now 15. Now, for the record, this is my first time being a parent of a 15-year-old. and every year, and it's like the joke. He laughs so hard every year. He's like, Mom, I know it's your first. I said, but we're going to do our best. We're going to learn together, son. And so being willing to give ourselves permission to learn with our children, to understand. When my son started doing logarithms in third grade, I made it very clear to him, son, I'm going to reach out for help for your homework. That's very clear. But to really to sit down and to be willing to be transparent. Teens want to know, are you going to put some skin in? My grandmother would say, honey, before you ask a child to put some skin in, you have to put some skin in first. So being willing to allow them to see you beyond just mom and dad, but as a woman and as a man, age-appropriate sharing, but realize that most of the things that you think you're protecting them from knowing about you, they already know. They're just waiting on you to trust them enough to share with them, listen, I'm learning right now, and a lot of times, and this is what I would say as a parent, a lot of times, son, I manage you at times based on my fear of what might happen. And what I'm learning to do is to trust you and not manage you from fear, but to live with you and coexist from you and lead you from possibility. That's a good conversation to start with. It says, and when I tell you I don't want you to go through what I've gone through, I know that that might annoy you. So I'm learning, and I want to learn with you how to trust you. But trust is earned. Give me the foundation, and I'll give you the foundation. So really understanding that the relationship is a relationship relay, and allow them to relay.
Yes. What about trying to help them develop some tools for a new world? As we said, it's not fair. They're inheriting our mistakes in a sense, and they're also inheriting maybe our evolutionary step. You know, they're the generation. We're a very important generation too. They as well are going to be one of the most important generations that has ever lived, because the decisions they make will not only affect their children, but people for all time. So how can we help them develop some other, really to deal with some of the crises we face today, beyond what we've talked about? How do we suggest, what sorts of things do we create that encourage fairness for them? What do you think, Bobbi?
Well, the one is modeling fairness and what that looks like, and having conversations about it. What is it, and how do you feel? Looking for places where they were giving and fair, and then asking them, how do they feel? We have 3 debrief questions that we always that we teach. One is, what happened, and then what did you learn, and what will you do differently? So it could be a conversation about what is going on in the world and what do you learn about it, and what are you learning about what's out there, and what are your thoughts, what are your fears, just going deep with it, and then looking at how will you respond to that. So again, it is having that conversation. And with parents, the tendency is to talk and tell a lot, because we have so much advice and we want to give it, We're so excited to give it. And so one of our tips for parents is listen more, talk less. And that you really want to get out, what are your thoughts? What are your fears about the future? What do you think? And again, when you just breathe with your child, look them in the eye, and you're actually silent for a moment to give them the opportunity, because often it's silent for a second, and then you start in with what you're thinking. Right. And so then if your child's not telling you something, we have a magic, I just call it magic line, which is, tell me more. Because they could say, oh, I don't know, or, I don't have anything to share, or just a one-liner. You can just say, tell me more, and then again, it's be quiet so that you can hear and they can get it out, because you don't know what kinds of fears. It could be about the economy, and your family's doing just fine, but their best friend's father just lost his job, and the child is wondering, well, is my dad or my mom going to lose their job? And they stay quiet about things that you don't know what's going on with them, about their fears about what's going on.
And I think it's being committed to be instead of a monologue, to be in a dialogue. And a lot of times when teens are talking to their parents, or when they think they've had a talk with their teens, they didn't have a talk with their teens. They were in a monologue. They were not in a dialogue. And there's a distinction between that. And as Bobbi said, it requires and being mindful of the questions that you ask. And so ask open-ended questions that don't bring a yes or no answer. Are you doing good in school? That's a yes or no answer. A different answer is, what about school is working best for you? And what about school are you most challenged? So being mindful about the way you ask the question, and then allowing them time to search their mind. A lot of times we give teens a 10-second, grace period, and then we just start filling in the blank, like Bobbi said, because they didn't speak fast enough. They're learning how to discover how to formulate the words. So they're not like us. We're versed. We have many, many years on them in communication. So really allowing them to search. And I love, Bobbi said, the I don't know, the ever so popular I don't know. and to ask, okay, well, let's search a little further until you find out. Let's keep going. I'm okay. I'm here for you with no judgment. Let's find out, how do you feel about that? And so really giving them space to search and dig and go, how do I feel about that? And to remember that we're in dialogues, not monologues with our children.
And it's not just parents. It could be siblings. I was talking to a dad yesterday, and he has a son and a daughter. And most of their conversations were family conversations of the four of them. And so the parents are talking. Not only that, but the older sister, is a straight-A student and has an opinion about everything and is a fast talker and loves to talk. And so he said, I didn't notice it, but there was an opportunity, and I think it was the first time that my son and I just went out to dinner, the two of us. And it was the best conversation I've had in his entire life. And he talked about his feelings of his sister as though talking up, and that's why I'm so quiet. Every time she talks up, I just go more quiet. And where they were having a one-on-one, he just opened up and had all kinds of thoughts and feelings that this dad had never heard before.
Wow, that's fantastic. What about encouraging them to create a fairer society than we have? Do you have any thoughts about that? I mean, we now are at a situation where we are at our most unequal in history. In our sense of give and take has been replaced by taking whatever you can get for you and yours alone. And we also have not only income disparity, but we have Western countries are blatantly unfair to consumers many times. We've got enormous amounts of corporate cheating and all kinds of things like that, where we're oftentimes so much competition between corporations or products. The pharmaceutical industry comes to mind, where over and over we discover only afterward that the company knew but hid dangerous side effects. I mean, do you have any thoughts about ways to help them not see that this is the kind of norm that they should follow, that maybe there is a better way?
Awareness, first of all, with the family discussions, that making it a tradition that there are conversations at breakfast or driving in a car or at family dinners, which are getting to be less and less, and for parents to share their feelings and what's going on in the world and asking questions to get dialogue around it. And another is where they are with fairness, because there is a sense of giving, but there's also a sense of graciously receiving. And why I say that is our first international program, which was 20 years ago, and I'll never forget this, we went to Moscow, which was then the Soviet Union. And they didn't know about business. They didn't know about, competitive companies. They didn't know any of that. And it was very interesting to talk with adults when we took so much for granted that they were asking what we would consider very naive questions, but it wasn't their world. But I took over a group of 52 U.S. students, and they were matched with 52 Soviet students. And our students, because there was a fee and expense to get over there, tended to come from affluent families. And this one girl, she told me the story afterwards. She said, I was so excited to go over there and share everything I have. I came with gifts, which tended to be more expensive gifts, and I had all this to give and share, all my education, all this. And she came back and she actually put fingers on both cheeks and turned her hands like, I'm so cute. I went over there thinking, I'm so cute. I have so much to give. And what she got was so humbling. Here was a family home with one bed, and the family gave it to her. The parents slept on the couch and the kids on the floor and gave her the one bed. They had 200 rubles for the whole month, and they gave her 40 of those rubles to buy souvenirs. And she was so humbled, and it was like I got the richest, most beautiful experience and gift in my life. And I went over there thinking, I have so much to give. And it was an arrogance. So there's something about being equal with people and receiving gifts and respecting the other people for who they are and what they want to give, rather than I'm best and I have the most. to give, but really sharing human to human.
And what you said, too, about contact with people who have had a very different experience, I think is so important, too, and something we really have to cultivate because that's happening less and less. What about you, Lisa? Do you have views on this?
Yes, absolutely. I'm excited that we're even having this type of dialogue because I think when you talk about things like the pharmaceutical companies and we're being taught supposedly to just look out for self, I think it's important to show our children what the end result is. I mean, it may be a hard conversation, but I say some truths are not served with warm cookies and milk. And that it's important for our children, our teens, to see the end result of our behaviors. Like if this pharmaceutical company is selling this drug and it produces this, then this is what could happen. Whether we show them visually or not, or whether we just talk about it, we've become such a society where we try to be numb to the ills of the world. We don't want to see the homeless children. We want to see I think it's important to allow our children to see the vastness. That young woman, for her to see, she was plopped right down in the center of another reality. We may not be able to do that, but to bring it to conversation, to be mindful. My son, for years, he thought Christmas fell on the 18th of December, and that it was just about giving to other people, because every year on the 18th, we would host an event where when I worked for the community agencies in Los Angeles, if anyone had come in throughout the year and they needed food, clothing, or shelter, we invited them to a Christmas celebration, and all we did was serve them and be with them. And it wasn't a handout energy. It was a be with energy. It was I believe this is what we're supposed to do as a community energy. And I didn't have much. At the time, I made, I think, $1,000 a month as a single mom. But it was just the right thing to do. So for years, my son thought it was the 18th, because that was the day we had this celebration on every day. And he thought he was just supposed to give things away. He didn't really get much. He was supposed to give things away. And so it was only later he found out. Only later he found out it was on the 25th, and it had to do with receiving some gifts as well. But really having truthful conversations about the end result, and then to ask a very clear question: son, daughter, is this okay with you? Because that would determine their character. Does this feel good to you? They get to answer yes, no, or I don't know. And if it doesn't feel good to you, just make sure as you're making decisions as an adult that you choose to not contribute to this. That's it. You're in choice. There's no don't do it. But just let me show you. My job is to expose you to all the possibilities of your choices, good, bad, or otherwise. And so I think that's been one of the most powerful things we can do, is to show the picture, tell the story, invite them into the world for a moment. That was the power of that young woman that Bobbi was speaking of.
Yes, invite them into the world and invite them, as you're saying, to find another way. One final question for both of you. What about, you talked, Lisa, so much about their community is now the social network community, and that's they're really needing of that, as we all do. We need belonging above all else. Do you have views about how to reestablish communities for young people? Because we're not doing a very good job of that as adults.
I think the first thing would be is to allow ourselves to go back to some old traditions. I mean, there's nothing wrong with, and that doesn't mean do it the way we did it in the 60s. Do it the way we would do it in this millennium, but go back to the core of what that looks like. So I think it starts with us as parents. We're so busy being busy, Lynne, that we're not even clear about what we're being busy about. We can't Google. There's no Google download good character. I tell people you will not find good character in the Google download. You have to build it and develop it. That we go back to some core principles that we were taught, and we make them mandate. We make them a part of our culture, a part of our conversation. My son is 16'6'2", and he still, when he walks into the room with it, and by the way, let me say this: we're not perfect. We simply are learning how to manage our imperfection. So I want to make very clear. If I use my son as an example, this is my first time being a parent of a 16-year-old. But my son, when he walks in the house, just yesterday, Sunday, we had an event from my father who turned 67, and we had about 26 family members over to my house. And my son walked in from his college summer camp, and he literally went around the room and had to kiss every auntie and every uncle. And I didn't have to say anything because that's a part of the culture. You walk in the house, you greet your family with a kiss and a hug, and the men and the women. So we go back to, and I learned that from my grandmother. I couldn't shake it. When I was 21, I still had to kiss my aunties. And so let's go back to those things that made Lynne and Bobbi and Lisa and every single person who's hearing my voice, the things that made the fiber of your character. Let's go back and make that the culture of our children.
Yes, beautifully said. Absolutely.
And make it for this millennium. Don't take it back to the 60s, and please don't say to your kids, in my day, they do not want to hear that. Just breathe it in as if it were new today.
Absolutely. But going back, absolutely. What about you, Bobbi? Any last thoughts on that?
Well, we're very committed to making a shift with the character of our youth and adults in our country, and to have it's a TLC project through the Excellence Effect. It's bringing the 8 keys of excellence to families and schools everywhere. So we have activities from Super Camp, and we offer it at no charge, and our goal is to reach 50 million students by the year 2015. So that we have a website where there's guides for deep family conversations and activities, and I guarantee that a family going through the program, a school going through the program, will have deeper relationships and better character.
Tell us the website.
It's 8keys.org. And
wonderful. And they can find out more about the Excellence Effect there?
Yes, it's numeral 8, so it's 8keys.org, yes. And we encourage people to sign up.
Wonderful. And Lisa, what about you? Do you have anything coming up you'd like to share with us on a website? And also, we didn't mention your wonderful book, No Matter What, which is just fantastic and has a lot of skills in there, too, that can apply to children as well as adults.
Absolutely. We wrote the book so that a 16 to an 80-year-old could enjoy it and get value out of it. But we have our program is called Motivating the Teen Spirit, TEEN, Motivating the Teen Spirit. And so if they go to motivatingtheteenspirit.com, there's a great video of what we do, but two, there's a dual CD set there, and in that dual CD set, we teach how to stop your negative self-talk, how to press pause, and how to press play, what the technique is, how do you do that so that you are training yourself to really bounce back to your more powerful conversation. But also on that CD, which parents will really love, we teach the power of communication and how your words don't land on someone's ears, they actually land on someone's heart. So we really teach teens how to really be mindful of the words you say in a moment. And then I always say, parents, listen to it with your teens because, we've been inside this cycle of life for a long time, and we can learn some new things about how we communicate to each other and to our children as well. So I would recommend that they pick up that CD as a learning tool, as an instrument, as a life skill, not necessarily as intervention, but as development, the way they put math and science and geography in their backpack, to put some life skills around communication and relating to each other in their backpack as well, and that's at motivatingtheteenspirit.com. Thank you for asking.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both. It's been such a fantastic conversation. I think we've left everyone listening with so many tools for helping young people really develop a new world and also negotiate the one we've got for them now. So thank you both so much for spending the time with me. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, Lynn.
Well, Lynn, I want to celebrate you for being an ambassador for such a dialogue. I say that it's our youth advocates and our youth ambassadors that create the space where we can take a moment and look at our most precious, investments, and that's our children. So I want to thank you for, inside the vastness of what you do, understanding that this conversation had to be had, and I'm honored that you selected my good friend Bobbi and I to be a part of it.
Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to catching up with both of you on the TLC, and for everyone else for looking at the Fairness Campaign and applying that to children as well as adults. Thanks so much.